Allora direi di cominciare. Buongiorno a tutti.
We are ready to start. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second webinar of the cycle dedicated to improve our knowledge about unaccompanied foreign migrants arriving in Europe. This cycle of webinar is promoted by the FA.B Family-Based Care for Children in Migration project, co-funded by the European Union, and aimed at support and reinforce and disseminate an alternative family-based care for young minors arriving in Europe alone. And we are focusing on 5 European countries, also partner of the projects, all of them in the Mediterranean area, and Cyprus, Greece, Spain, Italy, Malta. We have other partners coming from these countries, but we also have other stakeholders, professionals, families, associations. In this second webinar, we have with us José Carlos Cabrera Medina, researchers at the University of Granada, contemporary Arabic studies, is an expert consultant for different governments and administration in Spain in migration policies. He has a long experience as multicultural mediator and also expert in the Spanish frontier with the Arab world, and he has a long experience that he shared with the people in a radio program. The title is Ruta Mediterranea. You can listen to him on Canal Radio. He was also awarded by an award in Andalusia, and today he will introduce us to the knowledge of new migrants coming from Morocco and Algeria on the Spanish coasts, and it will give us specific information about this phenomenon, about these young migrants, about the new and old routes of migration that are continuously changing. And in these 2 hours, we will have the opportunity to listen to José Carlos Cabrera Medina. As you did last week, you can intervene, you can use the question and answer function, you can write contributions, you can ask a question, you can share remarks and observation. We will share them with our speaker, and we will have a break at the middle of the webinar, and then we will have a conclusion with the question and answer. You can listen to the webinar in several languages. The speaker will speak Spanish, but you can select Italian, English, and Greek. And now I would like to give the floor to José Carlos Cabrera Medina. Thank you for being with us and enjoy the webinar. Good morning, everyone. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Cidis, for considering me to talk about migration in Spain and to talk about the new reality. As you know, also in Italy, migration is changing, is continuously evolving. And after COVID-19, we are experiencing a new situation in the whole country, in Spain. Thank you, Alessandra De Luca, for your kind presentation to this webinar. Today, I'm going to talk about the migration reality in Spain. And in particular, I will talk about 5 scenarios of our country, of Spain. When the majority of unaccompanied foreign migrants arrive, we will focus on unaccompanied foreign migrants, and then after analyzing these 5 scenarios, we will see what is the form of receptions organized in Andalusia region in the south of Spain. In Spain, Andalusia is a wide region, the second biggest in the country, and there is a high population density. It is highly populated. We are a border to another EU country, and I'm referring to Portugal. So after analyzing these 5 situations, these 5 scenarios, we will focus on the system of protection for young migrants. And in the second part of our webinar, we will talk about how this reception system is organized and what are the profiles among young migrants, the recurring profile of the migrants arriving in Spain and in Andalusia in particular. And then, if you want, we can share experiences just to increase awareness, because through public radio in our region here in Andalusia, we try to increase awareness, to raise awareness. So also thanks to European project developed in cooperation with the UN and dealing with the new technologies. I believe it could be useful to know about this project also for young Italian migrants or young migrants arriving in Italy. So I will share my screen so that you can see my presentation. Let's start by assessing this new European reality, and in particular about assessing our economic space, and I'm referring to the European Union, the south of Europe. And we are focusing on Spain, which is the western part of Europe. I know that Alessandra has already introduced what I do, but I would like to tell you that I've worked for 18 years with young unaccompanied migrants who started arriving in Spain in 1999, and already then we created the first centers to welcome migrants. Many of them were minors, so we have 25 years of experience in this field. And we have always been providing assistance to these people. But still, there is something missing. For example, a flexibility in the reception system of our country. For 18 years, I worked as intercultural mediators. In 1999, it was a completely new professional profile in Andalusia. I was the first intercultural mediator of public services for unaccompanied foreign migrants. At that time, 18 years ago, I was a pioneer. And I developed this profile, this figure in the public reception system. Over the years, I've been involved in the development of this professional profile, the intercultural mediator has not been completely defined. It is still in progress in Spain. There is the family mediator, there is the civil mediator, but after 25 years, the intercultural mediator has not a defined profile. We work with young migrants from Morocco, but also with young Spanish, that thanks to the initiative of the University of Cadiz, every year we travel to Morocco and we have the opportunity to travel and to work with a small non-governmental organization of the country. And after these experiences, the people change forever. They have a new vision of their values, of the Moroccan culture, of the country, of the Morocco itself as a country. We work with diversity, and over the last 10 years, we have been involved in this project with very positive feedback by the people involved. And I would like to add that if the intercultural mediator has or needs a very flexible profiles to deal with migration, for certain areas in Spain, we also need competencies in mediation, competencies dealing with the real world, and I mean language competencies to improve communication. And over the last 18 years, I have worked as mediator in Algeciras at the border of the European Union, and there we welcomed many unaccompanied foreign migrants, and it was crucial to know the language. Today, I teach Arabic, Moroccan Arabic, for a foundation and for a culture of Mediterranean. And this foundation, Tres Culturas del Mediterráneo, that is the name of the foundation, is in Seville. In Spain, there is an increasing interest for our southern neighbors that have been neglected for a long time, and they are historical neighbors also from the cultural point of view. And as Alessandra said before, it is interesting to use and to exploit this experience. Working with minors, in my humble opinion, is a work that we should carry out in a very short period of time. We grow up, we become older, but minors are always minors, are always young people. One of the aspects that was a big concern for me and for my work, especially considering the borders with the EU, is the problem of values and the knowledge of values. And the lack of knowledge of the values of the people arriving and trying to be integrated in our society. For 5 years, we propose a program. The name of the program is Ruta Mediterranea. And the aim of the program is to improve knowledge, to know the others. Metaphorically speaking, it's a boat traveling every night in the public radio of Andalusia region. We have more than 200,000 people listening to us. We are a big region, as I said before. densely populated, and we can broadcast this program at the regional level. The program received a very important award by the Direction of Migration Policies of our region. The name of the award is Premio Medio de Comunicación. For those who speak Spanish, it is very easy to listen to the program. You can visit the website of Ruta Mediterranea, or you can use a platform, eBox, for example, probably the most popular platform in Spain, but you can also use Spotify. And this podcast can be useful to spread new ideas and to implement our practice also in other places. In Andalusia, there is a specific space to explain the values of people arriving in our country, and we can give voice to these people. We can understand their problems, so the people from the south of Spain can listen to the difficulties of these people living in our region. One of the aspects that I always mention when I talk about my experience in the webinars where I am invited, it's the reality, the way we present in front of the others. Today I am here and I am just what I am, but there is another side, which is what I do, which is a small part of my identity, and I would like to induce people working in the area of migration to think about what is the other part of their identity that the other people can't see or don't know. Each one of us has multiple identities. I can say that my great-great-grandmother, the lady you can see in this picture, she was a teacher in a small country in another region, in the Aragona region, is region of Spain. And as you can see, this is a very different image if compared to the Spain of today, to the modern Spain. And I always use this photograph because it is important to remember where do we come from, because the Spain portrayed in this photograph is extremely different. There was a difference in terms of gender that has been almost eliminated. That lady, my great-great-grandmother, was a teacher. And when she went to work in this small town of Aragona region, she realized that in that place there wasn't a school. So she organized a strike to protest, to ask for the construction of a school. And she was punished because of that, because she was a rebel. But thanks to her husband, who was working in that same school, that school that at the end was built in the country of Frago. Well, if you look at this photograph, you can see a different Spain, the Spain of my great-grandparents, a place where many people had to emigrate. And I always like to remember this story and to mention this story because it is part of my identity. When we talk about identity, there is an important aspect. I have a difficult name because you know that in Spain we have two names and two surnames, and this generates confusion when they want to ask me questions. They misname or they mispronounce my name, and it is always funny. And it is funny the fact that some call me Miguel Angel, which is not my name. And this is just an example to talk about the name, because the name belongs to the identity. I introduced myself, Alessandra introduced me, but our identity is also in our name. A name that makes me different from the other Spanish people. When a person is named, we clearly identify his or her identity. I don't know what's happening in Italy or in Greece or in other countries, but I always use these slides in my presentation because in Spain we have a very bad habit. We do not make the effort of learning the names of the people entering our country. And sometimes we change the name of these people just to make it easier to pronounce them. And in this way, the people feel that we are not able to approach their identity and to correctly pronounce their name. It is just a detail, but it was important for me, and I just wanted to focus on this at the beginning of my presentation. And now let's start talking about migration, focusing on identity, which is a crucial aspect to me, as well as I strongly believe in the values of social cohesion. We should be able to be empathetic towards all the people arriving in our country. In case of Spain, most of them come from the African countries. After this reflection on the way we introduce ourselves to the world and on how we are in the world and on our identity, that sometimes it is not correctly represented and fully respected, I would like to talk about migration in Europe, especially for what concerns the border with Spain. And I would like to focus on the last 4 months of 2022 so that we can have a close look at the reality of migration of unaccompanied young migrants, especially in the southern European countries. The Med7, a subgroup of the European Union, who meets over the last month within the framework of the EU to tackle the challenges, the common challenges, because all the countries in this space, in the southern European countries, they welcome migrants through specific routes. In this graph, you can see a very simple demonstration of the route from the Mediterranean, especially for what concerns Italy and Malta. Then there is the Central Mediterranean route and the Western Mediterranean route, and I will focus on this. And in this case, there are 2 subroutes, one arriving directly to Spain, also known as Atlantic route, because from the African continent we reach Canary Islands, and Canary Islands are Spain, our Spanish territory. Just to put things in context, these are the latest data I have collected from open sources and regarding Italy. At present, in Italy, there is a crucial moment, it's a momentous moment as for migration, but it is a cyclic moment. It's a movement that in Spain we know very well, we are fully aware of it, because it concerns the central Mediterranean, which is slightly different from the western Mediterranean. And when people arrive in the Italian hotspot, well, compared to Italy, usually we have less migrants. But when the migration is greater in the western part of the Mediterranean, we can see that in Italy the number of arrivals significantly decreases. At the moment, there are many arrivals. Many of these people don't want to remain in Italy, and most of them are then moved to France. In Spain, many people try to enter in Europe through the central route, and this means that there are less people arriving through the western route. The Balkan route, or the Western Balkan route, is another important route for the European Union. There is a piece of news, very recent, I heard it last night. There is a big concern, especially at the border with Serbia and Croatia, especially from the 1st of January, when it is expected a greater migration flow within the EU. Today, in Spain, despite less migrants arriving, there are less migrants arriving alone compared to the previous years, but it is still true that they come from different places. So there is a difference if we compare the current situation to the pre-pandemic, because in the past the way through Gibraltar was the main route, and the arrival of minors and unaccompanied minors was greater, while now the number of minor migrants has decreased.
Grazie. Oppure fare qualche pausa proprio di qualche secondo per consentire alle interpreti di tradurti. Grazie.
Okay. We kindly ask our speakers to speak slowly. Well, we have seen two very important moments, especially during the pandemic, and they have changed the geopolitics of Gibraltar, and in particularly the relationship of Spain with its neighbors, Morocco and Algeria. Morocco and Algeria traditionally hadn't a good relationship with our country. There are still some areas that are object of dispute because they have different policies, and they were in an area colonized by Spain in the past, but today this territory belongs to Morocco. an area considered in many cases still to decolonize, and I'm referring to an important area, and I'm referring to the Western Saharan area, and the administration of that area today depends on Spain, but actually it is occupied by Morocco. The international politics of Morocco in this territory has always been source of frictions with the relationship with Spain, but not only Spain, also with other countries such as France and Germany. In May 2021, 12,000 people invaded peacefully, as you can see in this photograph, a Spanish area of the EU. If you look carefully, you will see that there is a sort of barrier between Morocco and Spain. This is the city of Ceuta, and the geopolitics of Morocco with Spain and with Algeria has deeply changed. The relations has always been complicated over the last 2 years, but in the last 6 months, Spain has changed its vision about Western Saharan region so that Morocco can control the arrival of migrants at the south of Spain, especially in Ceuta and Medina, 2 cities in the Spanish territory and the Gibraltar district. So we are trying to give Morocco the opportunity to monitor its border and to prevent the arrival of migrants in Spain. In one day, in that case, we received 12,000 people in the Spanish territory. 3,000 of them were unaccompanied migrants, minor migrants. Apart from data referring to specific episodes and referring to international politics and dealing with the relationship with Morocco and Spain, it is true that migration policy towards our country from nearby countries such as Morocco, Algeria, and also migrants crossing these countries to reach our coasts, well, this has been a cyclic event, a cyclic phenomenon, pretty stable, especially at the end of spring and in summer. These are the cycles when we receive the highest number of migrants, as you can see in this chart. In the last 8 years, we had peaks until 11,000 people in specific months, and these are the peaks of arrivals in Spain. In this migration scenario in our country, it is important to remember that in the past, most of these movements were focused on Gibraltar, but in the last year, we can clearly distinguish 5 different scenarios. In the first case, we are talking about a place where in the last 3 years there were many arrivals because some routes were diverted towards what we call the Atlantic corridor that goes from the Moroccan coast to the 7 islands in the Atlantic Ocean that are Spanish territory. I would like to show you this territory in the map so that you can have a clear idea of the route. This route was crucial in the last few years and in particular in the last few months. As you can see, we have a specific profile of an accompanied minor migrant arriving in this territory. They have specific features. So when migrants arrive in this place, they have to remain there. They cannot move to any other area. And how do they get there? Well, they come from Morocco, but also from the sub-Saharan area of Africa. There are people traveling along this route because they can't cross the northern coast of Morocco and Algeria because Spain has signed agreements with these two countries, and these two countries are monitoring the arrival and the departures of migrants. So these people can only cross the Atlantic route, the Atlantic corridor. In the last 7 days and in the last 2 months, we received something like 2,330 legal migrants with an increase of 61%. In the last 2 months, 90 different boats have arrived, all of them from Morocco towards the Canary Islands. Well, I think it is something that could also happen in Italy. It is a severe problem, and it will be even more severe from the 1st of January because many unaccompanied foreign migrants will be in a different situation because they will be adult. So they will have to leave the reception centers where they are living. In many cases, they are people without documents. And this because in the Moroccan and Arabic culture, they don't celebrate the birthday. So when a child is born, especially in rural areas, he or she is not registered. The date of birth is registered only many months after the birth. It is just written 1st January of the year in which the child was born. So all the children with the date of birth 1st January will be 18 on the 1st of January. Many of them probably will be still minor, and we have been familiar with this reality. We have been dealing with this situation for 25 years in Spain, and still we haven't found a solution. There are many young people that ends in the street, and in the case of the Canary Islands, we are talking about an island where it's difficult to find a job, and it is also difficult to go back to their countries. I mentioned this first migration scenario, but we needed to mention another one. Another important scenario is this one. You can see in this slide, you can see 2 Spanish cities, but that are in an African territory. On the left, on the Gibraltar, you can see Ceuta. It is in front of a European territory that belongs to the United Kingdom, but it is out of the United Kingdom, out of the European Union, excuse me. And Melilla is the other city. From the 15th century, Gibraltar is part of the United Kingdom, and as I was saying, the second city is Melilla. Melilla is in the African territory, but it is a Spanish city and it is located close to Algeria. This is a different image, a map. So we are talking about distant cities. Melilla is very far from the Iberic coast and from Spain. In this image, you can see the two borders of the European Union in the African territory. We are talking about two borders that are destination for many unaccompanied minors and that have been a destination for unaccompanied foreign migrants over the last 25 years. Using this globe, I will show you the area so that you can clearly understand the migration route from sub-Saharan Africa, as you can see from Ivory Coast and through all this territory towards Mauritania, Mali, Niger, and in Niger, in the city of Agadez, there are other routes, other migration routes towards the north. As you can see from Agadez, we can go through other cities of Algeria. From there, many people reach the coast of Algeria or Morocco to go to Spain, or they move towards Tunisia and Libya to reach the central corridor. This is a map, and this is the pathway, this is the route of the Mediterranean route, so that you can clearly understand the different routes of sub-Saharan minors trying to cross Ceuta and Melilla, in particular over the last few months. Another important scenario to reach Europe is the Duct of Gibraltar. It's a very small space, it's a very narrow space, but extremely important from the geostrategic point of view. It is a small space dividing Europe from Africa, just 15 kilometers. In these 15 kilometers, 10% of all the shippings at global level transit. It's a small area, as you can see, but it is strategically extremely important, with 3 countries involved: Spain, Morocco in the south, but also the United Kingdom, because Gibraltar is a territory belonging to the UK, and there is also an important military base. I would like to show you the territory in detail using this map, and you can see an important scenario for the arrival of migrants in our country. As you can see, apart from Gibraltar, over the last month, migrants have reached Europe through the southern coast of Spain, and I'm referring to the blue dots that are points of arrival where we had access through open network and open sources, and we could map. There are also 4 points in the Algerian coast. They are in yellow. And these are places where people leave the countries. And they are key to study this new phenomenon in Spain. So there is the arrival through Gibraltar, which was the privileged place to reach Spain in the past. Well, today, in that narrow space, we can see migrants moving towards Granada or Almeria, and there are many minors among them, but they arrive also through other places, the area of Murcia and the area of Valencia and the Balearic Islands. In Gibraltar, unaccompanied young minors arrive on trucks because the truck route through the continent is extremely important in that specific area. So there are many unaccompanied foreign migrants arriving, traveling on trucks. And this gives us a clear picture of the profile of the migrants we are welcoming and assisting in the reception centers. Usually, the minors are more or less supported by the family according to the country of origin. Those who arrive by truck are less supported by the family. They don't They are not supported by the family, while those who arrives on a boat, boarding a boat, they have a greater support by the families because these journeys has a price between 1,000 and 3,000 euros. If they don't have money, they travel under the trucks or on little boats, the typical boats we can see in summer arriving in our coasts.
Bueno, ese es uno de los medios de llegada más habitual en el estrecho de Gibraltar.
This is one of the ways they often arrive in our country. Young people often arrive in our country through Gibraltar or through Andalusia. And we are talking about 15 kilometers. So many young people maybe use a surfboard, as you can see in this picture, or this is very popular the last few years. This is a water motorbike, and in 9 minutes they can reach the coast. So migrants reach our country, but also those dealing with drugs, or drug dealers or pushers. So this scenario, which was very typical over the last 2 years, has moved towards the Western world. And Granada and Almeria in Andalusia are the cities receiving the highest number of unaccompanied foreign migrants. And these migrants do not come from Morocco, but from Algeria. And this is a new phenomenon in the migration process in Europe through Spain. Here you can see a city like Mostaganem, That is the starting point, the point of departure of many boats reaching Spain and arriving in Murcia and Valencia region, with people mainly coming from Algeria. Again, I'm using this globe so that you can clearly see the routes. There are two new corridors, as you can see, towards our country. They are recent corridor, recently opened, but since 2022 they are the most important ones. Unaccompanied foreign migrants coming from Algeria crosses this route, and this is a crucial phenomenon for reception centers. Because Algerian and Moroccan migrants, minor migrants, do not have good relationships among them in the reception centers. So probably this is the novelty of migration in Spain. And this makes welcoming these young people even more challenging, because the consulate of Algeria in Spain, in many cities you won't find a consulate. For example, in Spain there is an embassy in Madrid and another one in Alicante, and this is an additional difficulty for the administrations because they are struggling to assist these migrants. And then there is a third corridor through Balearic Island. I'm sure you know the island Palma de Mallorca, where many migrants from Algeria arrive on this island. They come mainly from 4 cities on the coast. And so to conclude about the migration flows in Spain in 2022, and after this part we can have a break, we can say that we have less unaccompanied foreign migrants, but more areas of origin, more places where these people arrive. And I think that we could conclude the first part here. So, Alessandra, if there are questions or comments about this first part, we can answer. Okay, we will have a few comments and answer and then a break. The first question is this one. A boy from Gambia told me to have crossed Tunisia and then arrived in Libya. Wasn't it maybe safer to reach Italy crossing Tunisia? Well, Gambia is a very small country on the western African coast. It is important to analyze the relations between Morocco and Spain. People from Senegal, Gambia, and Western Coast, so when they arrive in Bamako, in Mauritania, they continue towards the north, and then they can go through the Western Corridor or through the Central Corridor towards Italy, which is the most common corridor today. Well, there are 2 possibilities for a person from Gambia: going to Morocco to reach Canary Island, and this phenomenon is not so popular recently, or they can continue to the Tunisian coast and then arriving in Italy. Recently, according to the data we are analyzing, the Central Corridor is the most commonly used by unaccompanied foreign migrant, because the Moroccan government is making a lot of pressure, is putting pressure on sub-Saharan people in Morocco. It is important to remember that the 27th of July 2022, many people crossed Melilla, and there were many people who died. 43 people died because of the violence of the law enforcement of Morocco. I think that before this pressure, many people from sub-Saharan areas are trying to change route and go towards the corridors leading to Malta and Italy. Thank you. Another question is the variation in the routes. Do they depend on the greater number of checks? Of course, definitely. When there is a more intense relations among countries, migration decreases. In Spain, migration has been an element of political pressure to induce a change in the international relations. When Morocco really wanted to make a change in the international policy by Spain, well, they have always tried to change the migratory flow and to increase it, of course. Another question on this point. What is the situation at the border between Morocco and Spain? And this situation was solved after killing many foreign people trying to cross that route. Could you understand who was the responsible for that action? Who was the culprit? Why there weren't any action to save these people? And there will, in your opinion, is it possible to have a quota to share the number of migrants? And what does provide the Spanish legislation for those who already have a Schengen document and wants to work there? Well, there are other questions. I will try to be brief and to answer in a simple way. First of all, law enforcement in Morocco reacted and responded in Spanish territory in Melilla at the border. At least 23 people were killed, according to Morocco, but the NGO of Morocco mentioned 43 people. In Spain, there was an harsh polemics because the Ministry of Interior stated that those people died in Morocco, in the Moroccan territory, but it was demonstrated that they died in the Spanish territory, but no one took responsibility for that. And at the moment, there is a lot of pressure on the Ministry of Interior Affairs or Home Office. The second question is why there weren't intervention and if there will be a compulsory quota for redistribution. Well, in the relationship between Spain and Morocco, and this is my personal opinion, there is always the attempt to make the border more secure, safer, but there is never a social perspective in working on the border. And a clear example is that Spain gives material to the law enforcement officer of the Moroccan border, for example, cars, so that they can better monitor the border, but they don't give ambulances, for example, to support people that, as in this case, were in a situation of crisis. When I talk on the radio, I always say that there is a perspective, a will to make this border safer, and this, on a cyclic basis, causes events like the one you have just seen, because there isn't a social vision of the interventions at the border. And this is just to answer one of the questions. About the second question,
mi impresión es que no va a haber una redistribución.
And about the redistribution of minor migrants, I feel that there won't be any redistribution because in Spain, among the different regions, we haven't signed a redistribution agreement. We have been talking about that for 2 years, but we haven't reached any conclusion. And in certain areas, such as Andalusia or Canary Island, there is a great pressure on the assistance to young unaccompanied migrants. The director of Dublin, well, in that case, we were talking about minors who asked to be refugees in our country. And I'm talking about my region, I'm talking about my Andalusia. Many minors welcome in protection centers don't know that they can have recourse to the law for international protection because they are refugees in Spain, and we should change that situation. In many cases, we try to give more information, but there is still an action aimed at limiting the number of data disseminated, aimed at limiting the knowledge about what's happening in the reception centers. And the last question before the break, to what extent the choice of the initial route is then modified during the migration flows, and what are the factors that impact on this choice? Well, I would like to answer this question in the second part of our webinar, and I'm going to tell you why, because I will give you a few examples about the Moroccan reality, the origin of unaccompanied migrant departing from Morocco, and it's always the same route. The migration route does not cover the whole country or all the migrants, just the migrants coming from specific places where the idea of migration is deeply rooted, and according to the studies that have been carried out over 20 years, the international cooperation to improve the passage of minor migrants should work more and should work in a very concrete and specific way. So I will focus on that after the break. Thank you for your contributions. It's 11:42. We can meet again in 10 minutes, 11:52. Is that fine for you, Carlos? 10 minutes are enough? Okay? See you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Rieccoci e ripartiamo senza perdere tempo.
Welcome back.
Vedo che gli argomenti sono
We are ready to resume our webinar.
Prego, José Carlos.
Ok, bueno, vamos a continuar. Hemos visto
So,
los 5 escenarios donde
José Carlos, you have the floor.
Importante dentro de España.
We can continue. We have analyzed the 5 scenarios and the main routes for migrants to reach Spain, especially at the southern border. And now we are going to focus on the profiles of the migrants arriving in our country. The main idea I would like to convey in this webinar is that a study of human geography where it is clear the points of origin, the starting point, and the place where these migrants would like to arrive, give us important information to help these unaccompanied migrant better. In the specific case of Spain, the localization of the point of departure is very specific, and the features and the profiles of these minors are very similar. I'm going to share my screen again so that you can see my presentation.
Okay. Bueno, vamos a seguir a la parte donde estamos. Es acá. Bueno, ¿cómo funciona el sistema de protección
I'm going to reach the slide.
Próximas diapositivas
so
no vamos a encontrar
how
muchas diferencias.
Supporting system, how the reception system for minors work. In the next slide, I think you won't find many differences between the system in Spain and in Italy. Maybe in Greece or in other country it is different, but for our countries, Italy and Spain, is pretty similar. In the first part of this meeting, I mentioned the possibility for minors who are welcomed by the reception system to request an administrative regularization through the so-called international protection law. Many minors, especially coming from sub-Saharan Africa, Algeria or Morocco, that because of their gender, because they are homosexual or because they are somehow persecuted and arrive at our coast, must have the possibility to know how to be in a regular condition, in a regular status, and to receive international protection. Unfortunately, the reception centers where these people are welcomed, especially in the provinces of Andalusia, do not offer such opportunity. These people could be considered as refugees in Spain, but they aren't. In this slide, you can see it is in Spanish, but it explains that the procedures for any people, be a minor or an adult, to be considered a refugee in Spain. So what are the conditions to be considered a refugee in Spain? Not according to the law of international protection, but according to the law for the protection of minors. In Spain, the system is different. In Spain, children that cannot be welcomed or that cannot be taken care by their family of origin can be helped by another family. There is the family reunion on the right, or these children, in this case a Spanish family or a family residing in Spain, can adopt the minor. For these unaccompanied foreign migrants at the moment, in many cases, the situation is that they are welcomed by family members already in the EU, and then from Andalusia they move to other places. For many years, I have worked in an association, and my task was providing information to minors, and I informed that their aunts and uncles or their cousins could come and take them because of the family reunion system. Some of these people came also from Italy to do that, and those that from Algeria try to do that, to have a regular status, realize that it was much easier to be in a regular position if the minors remained in a sort of reception system and asking the protection centers and the reception centers to take care of these procedures. This change in the perspective developed a phenomenon and put a lot of pressure on many cities in Spain, especially when they have to welcome a great number of minors, because they know that the bureaucratic procedure is pretty complicated. So we have tried to implement other policies to help these minors. And these minors can also be supported by families, so that what we call foster family or family-based care. Unfortunately, this system is not working successfully in Spain, and if it works just with minors coming from sub-Saharan Africa, and rarely we can organize a family-based care for North African minors. You can see this graph. This is a chart made by FA.B. for Causa, one of the partners of this project, and despite there are more migrants and minors assisted in the residencies, the foster families is stable. So we can still have minors welcomed by the families, even if there are many more migrants welcomed in reception centers. And this tells us that foster families or family-based care in Spain is not working properly. And this may be for three reasons: the arbitrariness of the system, the disparity as for minors. So this system works with people come from sub-Saharan Africa, and is not working from people coming from northern African countries. And of course, it is also important to consider the lack of resources, and this according to data collected by Procausa in 2021, and just 10% of all the minors welcomed in foster families deals with unaccompanied foreign migrants. So just 10% of the unaccompanied foreign minors are welcomed in families. So there are still many problems. There are still much to be done to improve the system. But now I would like to focus on the profiles of the adolescents arriving on the Spanish coasts. According to their origin, we have different profiles. The first one is a sub-Saharan young migrant coming in Ceuta and Melilla, in the cities of Ceuta and Melilla, Canary Island. Another important scenario is the one regarding Moroccan minors arriving through Gibraltar district. And then there is another scenario regarding people coming from the western coast and Balearic Island, and they are mainly from Algeria. Talking about percentages, 60% of minors come from Morocco, 30%, and this percentage is increasing, come from Algeria, 15% Côte d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, and 15% from Guinea. There are other minors profiles, but these are the main ones, at least for 2022. Another interesting aspect that I would like to clearly convey is that the profile of young people, of adolescents, can be reduced to 4 main groups. It is true that distinguish and dividing them into category can be risky because every person is different, but it is also true that the place of origins of this young migrant is key, is crucial, and this is clear, especially in the Spanish borders. I will talk about Moroccan minors because their presence is significant. They are the biggest group we are supporting in Spain and in our region, in Andalusia. And in this study of human geography, we can see the country of origins and the destination. And there are 3 areas in Morocco. I'm referring to 98% of minors arriving in Spain, an area in the north of the country where the reality is really peculiar, specific. It's a very poor area of Morocco, the northern area. An area that has always been abandoned by the state. And we have always welcomed the migrants from that area, and I'm referring to the area in grey on the Atlantic coast, where there are the big Moroccan cities, and from that area we welcome young Moroccan migrants born in the outskirts of the big cities. Consider that in Morocco there are cities like Rabat or Casablanca and Tangier that are bigger than any other city in Andalusia. Tangier on Gibraltar. In Tangier there are 3 million inhabitants, while in Seville, the capital of Andalusia, there are less than 1 million. So we are talking about migrants coming from the outskirts of the big Moroccan cities. And this is an interesting aspect to consider. There are other young people from the south of the country. They come from small cities, Benimelal, Genifra, Ouebzem. They come from this area, which is a rural area. And many of the unaccompanied migrants we welcome in Spain come from this area. I don't know the Italian reality, but I suppose that the Moroccans working in the agricultural sector probably come from this 3rd area. When we say that the profiles of these migrants are very specific and we can clearly locate them, it's because 93% of all the migrants, minor migrants arriving in Spain and welcomed in the reception centers of Andalusia come from this area. If we could work in the international cooperation to reduce the number of migrants arriving in Spain, we shouldn't focus on the whole country, but just on these 7 cities that you can clearly see highlighted in this chart. And this could reduce the 93% of unaccompanied foreign migrants coming from these countries and reaching Spain. As you can see, there is a specific starting point, a specific point of departure of migration, we are talking about areas where the idea of migrating is deeply rooted in these cities, in these 7 cities, and where, it is important to say, there are people involved in human trafficking. The work we can carry out and what we can understand about the country of origin or the city of origin is crucial to identify the right response and to deal with the migrant. In the case of migrants coming from Algeria, their journey is longer to reach Spain. We are talking about young people, almost adult, minors from Algeria coming from 4 main cities in Algeria, and they are aged 16, 17. Rarely they are younger, or they have entered Spain in 2022. A key concept to mention is that if we could consider all the Moroccans from this huge group, we could classify them into 4 groups. The first group of minors without a family, or with a family not structured, not organized. We are talking about minors clearly defined. They run away from the family because there are economic problems, and it takes a long time for them to get to Spain, from the moment they leave their house to the moment they reach the reception centers in our country. Well, we could consider a long time, a time that they spent in the street without money. They come traveling on the trucks. And then there is another group, and we are talking about minors coming from the internal part of the countries, such as Calasaranza. But they come from organized, from structured families, and they represent a sort of investment for the family. They migrate to support their family from the economic point of view. And even if the family is absent or invisible, they know they have a family, they know they have family members. Usually these young people travels on boats, and the journey is paid by the family, so the family is somehow supporting them. And then we have a third profile, a third group, minors coming from big cities of Morocco, mainly cities with big areas where there are economic difficulties, where minors live a condition of vulnerabilities. They are abandoned, they don't go to school, and the habits of these young people are urban habits. They are very different from the minors belonging to the second group and coming from rural areas. We are talking about city adolescents. They don't have a real migration project. They follow their peer. So if the trend is, if the fashion is to travel to Switzerland, they go. If the trend is to travel to Italy, they travel to Italy. Another profile is another urban profile. people living in a very adventurous way. They spend most of their time in the streets. It is very difficult to welcome them in reception center, and we are talking about a huge number of people. They move from one place to another. They travel in Europe from one reception center to another, crossing the countries. They have addiction problems, drugs or other substances. Near the Termini train station in Rome, there are many young people looking for other young people of the same age. They live in the street, and in many cases, they are children, street children. This fourth group consists of people who do not have money, no support by their family. They can't travel. They travel on the trucks, never by sea, never by boat. And there are four profiles, very clearly defined, and they are extremely important to organize the reception in our center. Their reactions to the proposals made can be very different. It must be clear that the solutions to welcome these minors in the families and in the centers cannot be the same for all the group. We can choose a target. We can try to offer them a solution that cannot be offered in other situations or to other groups. So, for example, for minors not supported by the families, they are full of scars all over their body. They are clearly recognizable. They haven't a migration project. They can be in Andalusia, Paris, Barcelona, Naples. They can easily travel, but they have difficulties in adapting and respecting the rules of reception center. And then there is the group of people coming from rural areas. They don't have the same profile of the adolescents living in the street. They know what migration is. They are familiar with the rural environment. Maybe they have family members that are migrants and they are supported by their families. They have an objective. If they have a family, maybe in the north of Italy, well, they travel to reach them. They plan the travel, and sometimes they are victims of human traffickers. And then there is a group 3. We are talking about minors coming from big urban cities. They have the same problems as the European adolescents, but they haven't a project. And many are involved in dynamics of illegal life, or they are victims of an unlawful life, and they remain street children also after the migration. An interesting aspect we have noticed in Andalusia is an increase of the arrival of girls in 2022. They arrive accompanied by the mothers. So they are not unaccompanied minors, they are accompanied girls, accompanied by the mothers, and this is a trend, an increasing trend. it is important to know the profile of the young people arriving at our center, because each profile has a different objective, and this entails risks, and also the risks can be different. In our region, in Andalusia, we can see that group 2, young migrants of rural origin, well, they don't spend much time in Andalusia because their journey is paid from the country of origin to any European cities through the drug traffickers' routes. It is important to understand what kind of group we are talking about. Also, when we talk about autonomy, when we talk about independence, because each group needs different resources, and the profile is also useful because it is much more difficult to work with young people living or coming from cities rather than people coming from rural areas. So having a clear idea of the profile is important. People coming from rural area are easier, they are more flexible. It is easier to start a project and a pathway in Spain with them. And in most of the cases, they represent a source of economic support, and so there is a big pressure by the families because their migration is a sort of investment. So knowing the profile is also important for the linguistic approach. In many cases, these young people speak a little Spanish, but you know that to be fully integrated, language is key. And about the migration project as region, as peripheral region of the EU, and I'm referring to Andalusia, we are mapping the countries of origin, the countries of transit, such as Gibraltar, and we can see that there are specific trends. So there are migration flows of young migrants moving towards specific places. For example, in 2014, it was very trendy to go to Switzerland, but in that country, then the reception model for unaccompanied migrants was modified, and so from Algeciras, very far from Switzerland, it was predictable a significant flow of migration because it is important to remember that being countries of the Southern Europe, we can provide useful information to improve the whole European system and to deal with this phenomenon that involves all the European countries. And I am going to conclude by reminding that it is important to analyze the different solutions and opportunities. The system we are actually implementing is not working well. We should improve the quality of a system and also the family-based care. How can we improve the system? Well, by providing more resources, especially in the reception centers. We are trying to make an effort to improve training of the new intercultural mediators. Until recently, intercultural mediators were hired just according to their language competencies, but the specific training in intercultural mediation was neglected. Today, the situation is improving and also the specific training is provided, but it is still true that there is much to be done. It is important to realize that there isn't a single definition of mediator when we talk about intercultural settings. there are many problems correlated to visibility when they try to train the new operators so that they can be good intercultural mediators. Just a few more words to tools we have been working on over these years. And I'm referring to the awareness-raising campaigns within the EU. It is a very useful tool also for you. I would like to mention, in addition, I would like to mention an application for mobile phone that we have created a few years ago with the support of the UN and in particular of the Department for Intercultural Dialogue of the UN. And I'm referring to an application, the name is Survival. You can find it in the App Store or in the Android store. You can download it. And it is a serious play, so the person playing makes a migration journey from an African country to a European country, and he or she faces 6 different scenarios. So you can pretend to be a young miner, you can be an African child migrating, you can play before departing. And using this application, it is very immediate, very intuitive to understand what these migrants can face. And then the young people from Spain, Italy and Greece should improve their empathy towards minor migrants. Minor migrants could live close to us, could go to school together with the European children. And then I would like to talk about Enter and the Letters, which is another application, Antura and the Letters. It is an application that you can find in the App Store and also in Android. It is an application designed to learn the mother tongue of minor migrants we meet in the reception centers and in the refugee camps. The young migrants can learn by themselves, they can learn their own mother tongue so that they won't lose the mother tongue and their origins. They can learn Ukrainian, Arabic, Moroccan. This application has been developed by an Italian living in Spain. And in the spare time, you can use these applications on your mobile phone to learn and to help the minors to improve their knowledge. Well, I have concluded. Alessandra, if you want, we can answer other questions. Thank you also for these suggestions. The app is a brilliant idea, and especially the one that can help you to be in the shoes of a migrant and you can pretend to be the migrant, you can try to understand the difficulties he or she meets to reach the country. Migration projects are always important, and the family-based care projects are also important for us, for FA.B. Unfortunately, there is just a percentage, a small percentage of children supported by family in Spain, just 10%. In Italy, we don't even reach that 10%. In my opinion, it is a cultural problem. Probably it is the foster care as an idea, as an institution, which is very little promoted and very little used by the same institutions, because the social services of the municipalities and of the places where these families are supported probably do not support this idea, but probably we should change our mentality, and we should understand that the best way to welcome a minor is a family and not an institution or a center. So we really need to change our mindset. And I would like to know what is the average age of minors welcomed by families. In Italy, they are very close to the adult age, and it is very difficult to match them with the families. It is true, as you said, that not all the minors are suitable for the proposal of receptions, in particular family-based care, and not all the families are suitable for foster family, but with a good selection, a good sorting, if we can use this term, both among minors and among family, and with a good matching, we could reach much better results. So my question was about the age range, about the minors supported by families. Yes, the young people arriving from Algeria usually are 16, 17, and their journey is very clear. Most of the time they speak French. They are trying to reach France because their second language is French. This is true also for sub-Saharan migrants, but for Morocco, I mention the 4 groups because they are very different also from the age. So the group 4, 3 children, are children that were immediately recognizable at the border, because when I asked them, how old are you? They told, I'm 13, but they looked like 8, 10 or 8, and I knew that in my center was not suitable for this kind of people, because they are a very volatile group. They do not accept a set of rules. So the reception in a center or in an institution is not the right solution for them. Minors coming from rural areas of Morocco, they start the journey in a different way. They are aged 10, 15, and they know, and also the network of the people surrounding them know, that when you are 18 in Spain, you are a person not in a regular status, and you can't be integrated in the labor market. So they are aged 10, 15, while the group coming from the outskirts of the big cities, they are aged 17, 18, and they have an erratic pathway. They can go to Madrid, Barcelona, or to Rome, and they lose time, a precious time that could be used to have a regular position. It is very difficult to work with these minors, and when there isn't a good, a sound, welcome network or network of reception, it is very difficult to help them and to support them in having a regular status. So the stronger is the European network, the better is the response and the answer we can give to these minors. There are a few questions. How Spanish people consider the migration phenomenon? Are there differences between the north and the south of Spain, as happens in Italy? In Spain, there is a clear aspect, that is the growth, the increasing power of the extreme right in Spain historically. We had many governments. Yes, I know, Alessandra. We also had many governments, but we had 40 years of dictatorship after the Civil War. And I was convinced that everybody knew what an extreme right government is. But the administration is persuading, is convincing Spanish people that it is different, and the extreme right has discovered that the work done is very poor, especially in terms of reception of these people. So if we do not start to work as a Spanish but also as a European network, we won't find effective solution to a continuous evolving phenomenon. Yes, right. The migration has been used and has been used by the countries in the Mediterranean areas. It is a continuously changing phenomenon that should be managed in a virtuous way, but we cannot cancel it and we shouldn't cancel it. Just two quick questions. What can you do? What do you do to improve the cooperation with Morocco to tackle the phenomenon, to tackle the situation? I'm going to repeat a concept I have already stated. There is a cooperating vision focused on security and safety, but not on social prevention and social aspects. The only level of cooperation is the Ministry of Interior, but it is not the Ministry of Inclusion. So if we do not have a clearer vision of a cross-sectional phenomenon in the society, we won't be able to find solutions. Last question. Mediation is key for different cultures to improve the knowledge about migration routes, yes, but it is not enough. Intercultural mediation should be addressed to those who are fully integrated in our society, but the same is true for us. For example, our TV program, the program we broadcast in Andalusia, is useful to explain that each one of us should change. Each one of us should give a part of ourselves to become a new society, the society of the future. And we can see it also in the football teams. The football teams in our country should mirror the image of the societies where everybody is committed to reach the same objective. Mediation is a bidirectional process. It is a bridge between two different cultures, and the mediator is a tool. And as a tool, he or she cannot support or fill in a gap for what concerns the language or the linguistic communication, but he should support the migrants also for the bureaucratic aspects and also for all the other aspects that can be challenges. We try to train our mediators in different sectors, school, prisons, and I would like to add one more thing. We should train these people also about the mediation techniques, negotiation techniques, communication techniques. There must be an element promoting the mutual knowledge of cultures to reach a common goal. We need experts, we need specific people specifically trained. The language is not enough. Last question, and then we will let you go, I promise. In Italy, the Ministry of Interior for the Reception Center for Minors, for adults as well, but in particular for minors, requires a multidisciplinary group consisting of professional educator, multicultural mediator, so people who have been specifically trained, people who belong to an official register and who have specific training for foreign minors, but also for Italian migrants and minors. So a multidisciplinary team that can support and that can help them to become autonomous. How does it work in Spain? Well, in Spain, each region has its own policy on this point, but we are increasingly aware that the intercultural mediation should be specifically trained, should use scholarship for work. And in my opinion, the most important aspect is that the intercultural mediator should have at least 3 competencies. The mediation, we can think of family mediators, civil mediators, and many others. And prevention, conflict prevention mediators and conflict prevention skills. So the mediator should prevent conflict and should be able to do that because he knows the cultural backgrounds, and the mediator must be a key profile to support migrants integrating in our society. He must be a profile that can be contacted to have information, a person who can explain how to move in the Italian context and that can provide clear and simple information. Thank you, Carlos. Unfortunately, the time at our disposal is finished. It would be nice to keep on chatting and talking to you, sharing our ideas. Thank you so much, Carlos. You will be with us again in the future in these cycles of webinars. You will talk about communication strategies, intercultural communication strategies, and verbal verbal and non-verbal communication techniques essential to overcome language barriers with a non-verbal communication, which is probably 80% of our communication is a non-verbal communication. So, thank you for being with us. See you on Thursday, 15 December, with a meeting devoted to young women, minors arriving in Europe. They are less in terms of number than males, and for this reason probably they have been neglected, but they have specific needs. And there are specific traits, specific features in their arrival. We will have Kepa and oil in the next webinar, so I kindly ask you to use the FA.B platform to write questions, observations. Please keep on discussing, keep on communicating. The FA.B platform is the same platform you used to register for this webinar, and it is fully devoted to communication. I have written the names of the two apps, Survival and Antura and the Letters.
Algeciras. Es más fácil porque hay varias aplicaciones.
Okay.
You can find Survival in English. If you look in Algeciras and you look for Survival, it is easy. I would like to thank you. I would like to thank the interpreters that have worked with us. Probably it was a challenge for them, but I would like to thank them. Thanks to our interpreters that make this webinar accessible to many participants. Thank you for your work. Thank you, Jose Carlos, and see you on Thursday at 10:30.